Violent and armed crime has seen a worrying increase over the last 5 years, with gang-related crime and syndicated organized crime remaining impenetrable. The Institute for Security Studies believes that the policing policy should be at the top of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu's agenda as he starts his work in the administration. David Bruce, policing consultant at the ISS, joins me to deconstruct this matter further. David, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Describe to us the scope of South Africa's policing policy and where its vulnerabilities are.
Okay, well, thank you for the question. The issue about policing policy in South Africa at the moment is that in many ways it's a completely neglected area. So the principal problem, if one's looking at policing policy in South Africa, is that according to the Constitution, the minister is supposed to develop something called national policing policy. And at face value, it would appear that it's been a responsibility which has been neglected by most of the ministers that we've had over several years. So what the ISS has done is put forward a set of proposals on what a policy should look like. The ISS's approach is that for some time now we've been thinking and talking to people about what such a policy should involve, and the difficulty is that the more people that you speak to, the greater the range of issues that you come up with. So there's many facets of policing in South Africa that where people see a need for improvement. And so what the ISS has tried to do is put forward a set of 11 recommendations, which are which we've identified as critical areas where there's a need for improvement in order to bring about overall forward movement in strengthening the South African police service.
Yeah, without belaboring all 11 of those recommendations, can you walk us through some of the perhaps the most important, most urgent and easiest for the ministers to start with?
Well, we don't know if there's any really easy ones, but one of the recommendations that we've made, and it speaks to the fact that one of the weaknesses in policy is that there hasn't been a coherent response from government to the basic question of what police priorities should be. And so the one recommendation that we're making is that one of the priorities for the police should be to come to terms with the scope of firearm crime and violence in the country. That would involve mapping much more effectively where firearm crime and violence is taking place, and focus police resources on substantially reducing the problem of firearm crime and violence, particularly in the areas where it's most concentrated. That's one of our recommendations. But we have other recommendations, for instance, focusing on streamlining the executive leadership system. We've got a set of recommendations or, various, let's call them implementation steps, and our recommendation on strengthening the detective service, other recommendations on responding to police corruption and serious crime involving members of the police. And the one thing that we're calling for is increased focus on recruitment for skill into the SAPS.
Do we have the necessary tactical and technical aptitude in dealing with firearm crime in the hotspots where they occur?
Well, you see, it's one of the questions that we need to develop our understanding on. It certainly, it's difficult for us to say, as we're based in civil society. We're not based within the police environment. What has been happening is that there have been a wide range of different task teams that have been established over the years, and we have some sense that what's happened with this tendency to, on an ad hoc basis, establish policing task teams for one or other issue has been to have quite a destabilizing impact on the detective service. So insofar as we're saying that there needs to be a dedicated focus on firearm crime and violence, that would have to be combined with other measures to come to, to audit and assess the capacities within the detective service in order to identify, the priorities for strengthening the detective capability within the SAPS.
Just to get a sense of the scope and scale of the work in policing policy that needs to be done, how much of the policing policy work that should be done can be done by executive authority, and how much of it will rely on legislative corrections and legislative action to be taken in Parliament?
Well, you see, one recommendation, one of the things that does need to happen is that there needs to be, it's long overdue now, there needs to be an amendment to the SAPS Act. The SAPS Act is in many ways with a few amendments in very specific areas, but in many ways we still have an SAPS Act that predates the 1996 Constitution. The SAPS Act that we have on the table is substantially the SAPS Act that was passed in 1995. So one of the issues that is going to face, it's partly the job of the minister, it's partly, of course, the job of the Portfolio Committee on Police, is amendment of the SAPS Act. And there has been a draft amendment that has been, circulated a few years ago. In itself, that raises quite a few difficult and complex issues. So, it's not only the Minister of Police, it's also Parliament and specifically the Portfolio Committee that have potentially complex questions to grapple with.
Yeah. David, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate your insights. Fantastic interlocutor always. That was David Bruce, policing consultant at the Institute for Security Studies.